A lunar eclipse is about to grace our skies, and I'll tell you how to see it and how to photograph it and how to enter for a chance to win a brand new Dwarf Mini Smart Telescope. More details in this video later on. Now, this is a very interesting eclipse. It is not a total eclipse, but we're getting to about 96.2% coverage, which is about as close as you can get before getting to totality, which is really interesting. So we're not going to see a full blood moon, we're going to see a very thin crescent, and I'm looking forward to it. Now, it's going to be visible for a lot of people, up to 3.6 billion people living in the path here, weather permitting. And unlike a solar eclipse, this lunar eclipse will be viewable by every single person in the path at the exact same time. We're just going to be in vastly different time zones. And this is one of the very best proofs that we have that the Earth is a globe, because maximum eclipse for me in the Eastern time zone is going to be at around midnight, and for people living in the Pacific time zone, it'll be around 9 p.m. there, which would not happen on a flat Earth. So how do you know if you're going to be able to see it? Well, first, I recommend going to timeanddate.com. I'll include the link to this specific eclipse in the description, where you can go into the map view, zoom into your location, click, and then you're going to break down where the eclipse starts to the maximum and when it ends. And you can also click and see what it would look like for your specific locations, as well as altitude at different phases, which is really neat. Now, if you're in the northern hemisphere, the moon is going to be somewhat low to the horizon. The more north you are, the lower it'll be. So you have to make sure that when you're trying to observe the eclipse, you have a clear view of the southeastern to the southwestern horizon as the moon moves across the sky. So the farther south you are, the higher it'll be and the easier it'll be for you to observe. And if you're on the western side of the eclipse, such as the western part of the United States, the moon will rise while eclipsed. And if you're on the eastern side, such as the Kagakama Remote Observatory in South Africa, it will set while it's eclipsed. So those two locations are not going to see the whole thing. But luckily for me, weather permitting, in the Boston area, I should be able to see the whole thing if I'm allowed to. Now, if you're in the southern hemisphere, depending on your latitude, it'll be much higher in the sky, so it may be a little bit easier for you to see. But for people in the southern hemisphere, you want to make sure that your northeastern to northwestern skies have a clear view of the sky, because that's where the moon will be for you, and upside down. And the moon does not care about light pollution, so you can observe this from anywhere in the world, even from the middle of Times Square in New York City. Although at certain points when the moon is getting smaller and smaller, it's going to get a little bit dimmer, so it'll be a little bit harder to find the moon in the sky, but you'll still be able to see a sliver of a crescent moon there, which you can still see from Times Square. The only downside of being in a light polluted area is that the moon can sometimes get a little bit red from all the sunsets that are happening on Earth, sending all that red light to the moon. So if you're in a dark area, you may actually see a little bit of the moon turning red at maximum eclipse. And another benefit of darker skies is that as the moon gets dimmer, the sea of stars that start to appear is magnificent. I saw this for the first time in a Bortle 3 zone during the March 14th, 2025 total lunar eclipse, and my mind is still etched with seeing how the moon looked in the middle of all of that, all the stars in the sky, and I want to experience that again. Now, if you don't have a view of the eclipse or you're clouded out, the next way you can observe the eclipse is by coming back to this channel, because I'm planning on live streaming this from up to 3 different locations. I have a sea star set up in the western part of the United States, one in South Africa at the Kagakama Remote Observatory, and if the weather lets me, I'll have a Dwarf Mini here at home in Boston, and I want to live stream the moon from all 3 locations at the same time with their timestamps, so we can see just how vastly different time zones show us the lunar eclipse all at the same time, but at different local times. I'm really hoping at least 2 of the locations are clear. It's still a little bit too early to really tell, but I have my fingers crossed. Now let's talk about how to take photos of the moon and of the lunar eclipse. Now, the easiest option for anyone is going to be your cell phone. All of us have one, and the best thing to do is to learn how to take manual photos of the moon. And a tripod is highly recommended, because as steady as your hands are, it is not going to be as steady as a tripod, and you can ensure that your images are not going to be completely blurry. Now you need to learn how to use the manual settings on your phone because it'll help you get cleaner details of the moon and of the lunar surface. Now you want to decrease the ISO, increase the shutter speeds when the moon is full, and adjust the shutter speeds as the moon gets smaller and smaller. You want to take longer and longer exposures, and that's when a tripod really helps you. It may take a little bit of practice, but you can get a good amount of digital zoom and actually get some surface features on the moon, which is kind of cool. Even then, a phone will not allow you to get high resolution images of the lunar surface because it just doesn't have the focal length to get close enough to the moon. Unless you have a Samsung phone and it uses AI to generate something. Does it still do that? Now, if you have an actual camera like a DSLR and an actual lens, you'll be able to get much closer to the moon and get much better surface details. Any lens will work, so here I'm using my 75 to 300 millimeter kit lens, and it works beautifully for the moon. Focal lengths between 300 and 900 millimeters are around the sweet spot for getting really great lunar surface details, especially with a crop sensor camera. If you have a full frame camera, you can go even deeper because you'll still be able to fit the whole moon in your field of view. My recommendation is to shoot in manual mode and pick an ISO and stick with it. My recommendation is a low ISO, maybe 100, 200, or even 400 if you need to go there. The lower the ISO, the lower noise you'll have. And the reason you want to stick with one ISO is because as you take more images throughout the session, the noise levels in your images are going to stay the same. So if you composite them or you make a time lapse, it'll look a lot more balanced. As the moon gets dimmer and dimmer, you'd want to increase your shutter speeds. So you can go up to about 4 seconds, I think. That's what I did with the total lunar eclipse, maybe not as much for this 96.2% eclipse. But increase your shutter speed so you can get surface details on the crescent moon that will appear. I would also recommend taking bracketed exposures because it'll help you later on in processing because you'll have access to slightly brighter and slightly dimmer exposures. Now, having a tripod here is very much recommended, I would say borderline mandatory, as well as an intervalometer, especially if you're trying to do time lapses and longer exposure images. Many modern cameras will have an intervalometer built in, but you can always get an external one and play with that. Now you can go one step further and use an actual telescope like I am here with the Astra 71F at 490 millimeter focal length, which provides amazing images of the moon. And as you'll see, the focal length is right at my sweet spot, but I do wish it was a little bit deeper. If you use a Canon camera, you can actually automate your lunar eclipse imaging using a software called LetNC, or Lunar Eclipse Timer and Controller. I have a full how-to video on that. Check that out, link is in the description. It is a full-on walkthrough from start to end, and I used that for the first time during the March 14th, 2025 total lunar eclipse, and it worked beautifully. I think LetNC lets you take up to 17 images per bracket, which is kind of crazy, which is like all of the exposures. So you can get some really nice high dynamic range details for every step of the way. What's easier than a cell phone? Well, a smart telescope like this Dwarf Mini. If everything goes according to plan and the weather cooperates, I'll be live streaming directly through the Dwarf Mini. Now, a telescope like the Dwarf Mini or a C-Star, all you have to do is just plop it down on the ground, turn on the app, find the moon, turn on tracking, and start imaging. And one of the best things about these things is that they will automatically track the moon for you and do all of the exposures for you. And if you're doing this in time-lapse mode, it will time-lapse it for you so that you have a ready-made MP4 file that you can share with the rest of the world. And what makes this better than a cell phone is that first, it has a much better sensor, bigger sensor, and it also has a much longer focal length. Focal length of about 150 millimeters versus most cell phones is going to be like 2.7 millimeters. So you can actually get good lunar surface details with this. Of course, if you have a smart scope with a longer focal length, you'll be able to get even closer and better pixel scale, depending on the sensor itself. So it all depends, but the smart telescopes are definitely the easy button here. The Dwarf Lab channel has a very detailed video on how to take images of the lunar eclipse, so I'll post that link in the description, so check that out when you get a chance. So a few tips I can give you for using the Dwarf Mini or any smart scope, really. First, I would recommend plugging this into an external battery while it's working, because even though it will run hours, the total runtime of a lunar eclipse is actually longer than the battery life for most of these. If you're going from the start of penumbral to the end of penumbral eclipse, which, you know, most people won't count that, but still, you don't want to make sure you don't want this to run out of battery in the middle of imaging. The next tip I can give you is to make sure that you have enough space on this. I have traveled with smart telescopes before without clearing space and have regretted it. So one of my checklist items before I go out to image with this when I'm not at home is to make sure that I have enough space to save those images. Third optional tip is to put this on a tripod in equatorial mode. Now the moon is going to move across the sky and it's going to experience something called field rotation. It's just how our view of the cosmos changes as they go through meridian, which is the highest point in the sky, and it flips around. When something is just horizontal like this, called azimuth, everything seems to rotate. But when it's in equatorial mode, pointing like this, it rotates with the Earth. So when you're doing time lapses, it'll look a lot smoother because the moon itself is not going to rotate, it's going to stand still. But there's no wrong way to do it. Do it both ways. You can always correct for field rotation later on, but oftentimes it actually adds a really cool effect as you see the moon or the sun kind of do a barrel roll as it goes past meridian. Dwarf Labs sent this to me to test out and to use in the upcoming lunar eclipse, so I'm very thankful that they did that. But not only that, they are letting me give one away to one of you. To kick off the giveaway, make sure you are following this channel and you are following the Dwarf Lab channel. So first, there needs to be 100 eligible comments. And by eligible comments means it needs to be a valid comment. So my question for you to answer in the comment is, if you win the Dwarf Mini, what will be your first target in the sky? Second, this video also needs to get to 10,000 views in order to trigger the giveaway of the Dwarf Mini. If we don't get to 10,000 views, but we get to about 40 comments, instead, Dwarf Lab is going to send out a merch bundle, which includes a magnet, a handbag, postcard, collapsible cup, and a couple other things. So let's try and get to the limit of 100 comments and 10,000 views by September 9th, which is the deadline. Secondly, just for extra verification, I'm going to have to ask you to fill out a quick Google form, which will ask you for your email and your YouTube handle, nothing else. It's just so that I can match a comment to a YouTube handle and also email you directly if you're selected as the winner. But if you have any feedback on this process, I am very open to it, so let me know. And lastly, if you take any photos or videos, I would absolutely love to see them. I hope you'd consider joining our Discord server where we have a growing community of astronomers and astrophotographers, and we'd love to see your videos and photos there. I'd also like to take a moment to send a huge shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon, members on Buy Me a Coffee, and here on YouTube for supporting me through my astro adventures. You are all amazing. If you'd like to join this list of wonderful people, please check out the links in the description and the pinned comment below. Best of luck with the eclipse. I hope you get the clearest of skies, the best seeing available, and until next time, clear skies.